All right, so let's jump into it because this little duck too has to go to bed soon. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the podcast, episode 2. We are streaming on Rumble at the moment. I am getting some drop frames, but we'll see how we go. Obviously, today, guys, the big thing we're going to be talking about is Zelensky's declaration. We're going to be also talking about Alison Mack, who's been released from prison. And also we're going to wrap it up by talking about Mark Zuckerberg and Threads and what's happening with that. Because there's a lot that's happening. So let's just jump straight into it and let's kick it off. So Zelensky has made this declaration, right? And it's very, very interesting. So let's listen to what he has to say.
The U.S. will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters to war. And they will have to fight because it's NATO that we're talking about. And they will be dying, God forbid, because it's a horrible thing. The U.S. will have...
Right, so the U.S. will have to send their sons and daughters. Now, obviously, at the end of the day, anybody that's familiar with the industrial complex or military-industrial complex is not completely shocked by this. Anybody that sits there and goes on about how they support Russia or support Ukraine, actually, maybe we should be sending them first, sending their sons and daughters first. But that was always the argument, right? Is that, well, we're not sending our children... So at the end of the day, then we can go through and you know, we can support them by financially funding it, and it's not so bad because it's not our kids that's dying. That's the argument you tend to hear from the left. Now, this is Zelensky directly refuting that, saying, well, no, if NATO gets involved in this war, your sons and daughters are also going to have to be involved. Now, obviously, Snopes has gone through and did a fact check. As we know, obviously Snopes is always very left-leaning, but did Zelensky say US will have to send their sons and daughters to war for Ukraine? And they're claiming it's mixture. So, yeah, basically they're saying yes, right? So what's true? Zelensky did say, right, the US will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way that we are sending our sons and daughters to war. You're not sending your daughters. You're sending just your sons. However, he was talking about the hypothetical situation if Ukraine loses the war against Russia. That would lead to a broader conflict resulting in Americans being pulled into fighting. So what's false is they're claiming Zelensky did not declare the US will definitely send soldiers to fight and die for Ukraine's war. Right. And as I said, they're obviously talking about NATO here. Right? And that's the big thing, is that it's all about NATO and what NATO is going through and doing. Why is... Yeah, gotcha. Right. So at the end of the day, that's the big takeaway is, yes, they're talking about obviously this hypothetical situation where if NATO gets involved, then yes, the US troops will also have to be in it as well. Now, obviously, like I say, this is directly countering what the left has always claimed is, well, we're not sending our children to die, we're just sending money. So at the end of the day, yeah, it's kind of directly countering that. But as for this, look, here's the thing. If you really want the skinny on this war in Russia and Ukraine, there's been 3 times where Russia and Ukraine were at the peace table. And we're about to sign this, and the US and obviously the third time the UK got involved and actually told Ukraine not to sign it. If it hadn't been for the US or the UK once, there would be peace in Russia right now. And all basically Vladimir Putin wanted was that the Donbass region would stay independent, but also Ukraine, that they would not join NATO. And it was a whole bunch of concessions, and it was a pretty good deal, to be honest. But the US went involved, or the war machine got involved, went over there and said to Zelensky, why are you going to sign this? You're going to win this war. Why are you signing and conceding to Russia? Well, I don't know about you, but this doesn't seem like the Ukraine is winning. This is the narrative that we keep getting pushed, right? We keep hearing, oh, Ukraine's winning this war, right? And all this sort of stuff. Well, they're supposedly winning it and supposedly obliterating the Russian army 12 months ago. So the Russian army has a lot of tanks and men that is seemingly throwing at the problem, or it's been overstated. And I'm thinking it's probably the latter. I don't think the war is going particularly well for either side, but I don't think the Ukrainians are obliterating the Russian supplies. But yeah, obviously, guys, as for this, yes, Zelensky did say it. It's kind of a wake-up call to everybody that supports this war. You might end up, and let's face it, Halliburton, Vanguard, BlackRock, these companies, they don't care if your kid goes to war. They still make $10,000 or $100,000 a rocket. They don't care if your kid fights. So yeah, everybody that's cheering on this war, maybe be a little bit more careful of what you share and what you don't share. But anyway, let's jump into the next topic.